Good morning. Welcome. Happy Valentine's Day. Happy day after Super Bowl for those of you who follow American football. I'm David Danto, and this is Poly Weekly News. This is the second time that we've done this show live, so I really appreciate you joining us for this. We have a terrific show scheduled for today. We're going to be talking to the team from Metrigy Research. Let me give a quick view of them and thank the folks at Zoom for helping us use the technology that's here. I certainly would like to ask them to introduce themselves and talk about what's going on. So before I do that, Robin, let me ask you, where is Metrigy? I didn't see Metrigy 5 years ago or 4 years ago. How did it form and what happened with it?
Yeah, hi David, and thanks for having us today. You're absolutely right. We formed the company a little over a year ago, and we had a great first year. So Erwin and I kind of got together. We've been working together for quite a while at Metrigy's Research, and we decided to start another company. And we started off with 6 people. We're about to hire our 10th person now, so we were able to grow quite a bit in the first year. And we basically have a mission to focus on employee and customer engagement research and metrics that basically help IT, CX leaders, vendors and technology providers in the space just make more informed decisions, make better informed decisions using a lot of the research and the metrics that we gather.
And certainly your research is some of the stuff that I look at that I take very seriously. And I want to get into what some of your studies and what some of the changes are that have shown. But I'd like to introduce the colleagues that we have on the show from Metrigy today. Beth, I'm going to ask you to jump on and introduce yourself. I have to be completely honest with you. Obviously, I've known you for years, but I completely missed the fact that you joined Metrigy. So when did that happen, and how did I miss it, and what's your coverage going to be there?
Yeah, stealth move. Well, David, first, thanks for having us. I joined Metrigy last October, and my role here is Vice President of Research and Principal Analyst. I joined from Informa Tech, which I think most of your audience may recognize for the Enterprise Connect show. And I was the program chair for Enterprise Connect, as well as the editor-in-chief for the associated media sites, No Jitter and Workspace Connect. So kind of left that media and event business behind and joined the analyst world. I've known Erwin and Robin for a long time. Have always had the utmost respect for them. So I was really pleased to have this opportunity to join Metrigy. And I'll be focusing particularly on CPaaS and introducing a new coverage area for us, which is employee experience.
Okay, that's terrific. Thanks very much. And then last but not least, Erwin, I think you are the one of the people that have been on the Poly Weekly News show the most. This has got to be your fourth time, maybe your fifth time. I can't even really track it right now. Tell us about what you do and what you cover at Metrigy when you're not out camping and hiking and doing all those fun things that I see you doing online.
Yeah, not so much of that right now in the winter, but yeah. Hi, David. It's good to see you again, and thank you again for having me on, and as well as Metrigy on this show. So I lead our coverage around unified communications and collaboration. So mostly focusing on real-time communications, voice, messaging, video, management, security, 911, all sorts of tangential areas related to those technologies.
Terrific. So let me put the question to you, Erwin, since you're on right now. What's going on? I mean, I'm going to ask all of you, and we'll have this in the conversation. But we've been talking about back to the office that some people want to do now, probably for about 2 quarters. And whatever the variant of the day is has stopped people from doing that. We have a lot of people saying, "I'm never going to go back to an office." What are you getting from your research? What are you hearing from clients? And I'll ask you first, Erwin, but everybody can jump in. What are you hearing about what's going on? Are we going back to offices? Are offices changing? What's the deal with what people are trying to do?
I think it's really a mix, but I think hybrid work and work from home is here to stay. I know we've had some conversations in the past about, whether or not companies would fully go back to the office or whether they would continue to allow people at home to work from home. And I think the market has spoken over the last couple of years. The tools now exist that people can work effectively from home and really don't have to lose a couple hours a day to commute if they don't want to. And I think what we see in our research is about 20% of employees want to stay home full time, about 25, 30% or so that would like to have the flexibility to say, you know what, if I want to work from home, I can work from home. But you know what? I feel like going in for a day or two, or I want to meet with people for a day, or I need to get out of my house and see other human beings. That they have that flexibility. And I think for the rest of companies, about 10 to 15% or so that are mandating people come back. So pretty small percentage. And the rest of it really just depends on what your job is. Obviously there are a lot of jobs that can't be done from home still. So I think what we see is the continuum of, hey, everybody has to go home. We've got this pandemic in early 2020 to, we want to start bringing people back. And now Omicron hit and maybe we're not going to bring them back yet, to now let's give employees empowerment to decide what works best for them. And from a business and IT perspective, we need to figure out how to support hybrid work and get into a lot of what Beth will talk about around employee experience, keeping people happy regardless of where they're working from.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Beth, I'll ask you because I follow social media as much as the next nerd that does, and we're seeing a lot of people changing jobs, happily moving to other roles. People, the Great Resignation, as it's called, is the factor of employee experience something that's leading into that phenomenon?
Um, I don't know if it's leading into the Great Resignation, but it's certainly something that companies are adopting in order to kind of stave off that, resignation. And employee experience, it's certainly not a new topic. I mean, companies have been dealing with employee experience and trying to get a gauge of, employee engagement for a long time. But certainly with the pandemic, we've seen much intensified interest, both from the vendor side, trying to capture data and deliver more information that companies can use to assess the experience they're delivering their employees, and how engaged their employees are, as well as from the companies themselves. And we've seen it taken on not only by your traditional sort of HR personnel, and gathering information through your, quick employee polls and, regular annual or, periodic surveys, but also then from coming out of those tools, really targeting the IT people to help deliver information out of the tools that people have started to use, during this pandemic, the meetings in particular, and the collaboration apps. What can we do with the data that companies can gather out of those tools, how people are spending their time in meetings, and how to improve that whole experience.
So Robin, from like a 30,000-foot view, what are you seeing companies do right now? Are they still sitting and waiting behind the lines, trying to figure out what's going to happen and when, or are they starting to actively transform offices and transform technology and work with it? And I'll ask you that question, and I'll also ask you to elaborate on what I know is a Metrigy term, which is this concept of successful companies or success groups, where you track and measure companies that are performing well, and see what they're doing as opposed to everybody else. So I'm certainly curious what you're seeing and what you're hearing about these various organizations.
I mean, we're definitely seeing companies already kind of making their decisions of what they're going to do. So I cover the CX and customer experience space, and on that side, where you look at things like contact centers, about 71% of companies already have made the decision that they are going to continue with a work from home environment, whether that's full-time, part-time, hybrid type of thing, where everyone goes into the office and stays home a few days a week. Everyone goes into the office in one team, and the others stay at home on another team. And then there are still a bunch of others who are, still trying to figure it out. Right now, in our latest research, only 6% of companies on the contact center side have actually made the decision to fully return to the office. Now, what we found, certainly anecdotally, as we're talking to companies, is kind of a split. You'll hear people saying, "Oh, none of our employees want to come back to the office. We're telling them they have to come back," and they're all saying, "No, you make me come back, I'm going to quit." They're trying to be very flexible and say, "Okay, come back one day a week or 2 days a week, and you can even pick the day." And they're saying, "Nope, we like working from home." And then you've got another group, and I would argue a smaller group at this point, who are kind of saying, "Well, we're just really tired of working from home." And these might be people who live alone. Maybe they just want to get out and about more. Maybe they just do better in an environment where they're surrounded by people most of the day. So you've got that group that's saying, "Hey, bring us back to the office. We want to get back. We don't like this work at home environment." But in our research, we found that in about 50, I think it was 56% of the cases, the work from home experience during COVID improved management's perspective on the viability and the success of working from home. People who once may have thought, oh no, no one's going to work from home. I'm not paying them to, take naps and sleep in. And they're all of a sudden they're realizing, wait a minute, people are more productive working from home. So I think there's a lot going on here.
Okay, and coming back to that idea of the successful companies, the success group, can
Yeah.
you give a little explanation around that?
Yeah. So whenever we do our research, we ask organizations if they've measured success, sort of before and after success of using different technologies, of doing a transformation initiative. So we ask them, how did your revenue change? Maybe it went up, maybe it went down, maybe it was flat. Costs, employee productivity, and in the CX space, customer ratings. We also have asked before about employee ratings of their company. So we look at various metrics, and then we kind of line them up from best to worst, draw a line in the middle, and those above that line are in the success group for that particular area. And then those who are in the success group for more than one of those four or so areas, we flag as successful for the entire research project. And then we can draw comparisons. Companies who have measurable success using a technology, doing a transformation, whatever we're looking at, what are they doing that's different from others? So you can look at things then like spending. It doesn't always hold true that for a company to be successful, they need to be spending more on a particular technology. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So that kind of tells you where that technology is. In the CX world, for example, like I said, where I cover, successful companies are spending considerably more than those in the non-success group. It's like 4% of the revenue on CX technologies versus 1.7% in the non-success group. So you can kind of see in that case, spending matters. And you can look at other things like what other technologies are they using? How many, how many managers per employee? How many people in the IT staff running a technology? So you can do all sorts of correlations that help companies to say, hey, I want to be successful in this space and I'm not right now. Where am I missing the boat? So you can get some real quantitative metrics to help companies in that area.
And Erwin, I'll ask you in your latest UC research, what are you seeing relating to these successful companies and what they're doing to prepare their offices? Is the layout of the office changing? Are they changing how they want to operate? What are you starting to see in terms of some of the results of the research?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. First off, the successful companies are investing a lot more in being able to support remote workers. I came out of a network engineering management background, and if somebody was working from home, granted back then they were probably dialing in, but if they were working from home, it was best effort. You didn't really go out of your way to support them. So what we saw early in the pandemic was making sure that we at least can instrument those remote employees and make sure that we know what kind of performance they're getting. Now we're seeing more of a push into figuring out what kind of environment they need. So investing in higher quality endpoints is an example, making sure that they have a better experience or at least as good experience as they would if they were in the office. In the office, most of the focus has still largely been around space management. And I think companies are trying to make sure that they're not going back to that old way of having the open workspaces where you've got an oversaturated workforce crammed into an open workspace because you think they're going to collaborate better if they are sitting on top of one another. I'd say the one area we're starting to see a lot of focus on now is what do we need to do to ensure meeting equity. So if you think about the old way that remote workers used to connect into meetings, they dialed in, they were completely excluded from most of the conversations, they couldn't see the whiteboard. Maybe if they were lucky, every so often somebody would go, hey, we've got people on the phone. Do they have anything they want to chime in? Now we're getting in an environment where most of the people, 80% are on a virtual meeting application like Zoom or others. And the people that are in the office can't see the chats and they can't see the whiteboard or the virtual whiteboard that the people are scratching out ideas on that are working remotely. So we're starting to see a renewed interest to how do we ensure that we can capture that information and bring it into the conference room so that you don't have people that are sitting in a meeting room who all have to be looking at their laptops to see what's going on in chat and to see what's going on in virtual whiteboards. So starting to see renewed interest in things like touch screens, and we're seeing efforts by some of the vendors to be able to put some of that sidebar conversation up on the screen so even the people in the meeting room can see it.
So I guess that would really be the question that I would want to ask all three of you, and anyone feel free to chime in if you want. Is cutting to the chase. We've guilty. I'm one of the people that got affected by the Omicron variant. It wasn't my fault. I wear a mask most of the time, except when I was at a doctor's office. So what the heck? But now that it's waning and the numbers are getting better, what should organizations be doing now? What you can't really wait until all the employees are back in an office or all the employees have quit because they don't want to go back into an office. What should they be doing now to be prepared for whatever the future is going to bring for the second calendar quarter of this year or the third calendar quarter of this year? Anybody want to kind of give some advice that people can follow that's actionable?
I'd say get your technology strategy in place, because no matter what you're going to do, whether people are coming back into the office or not, or hybrid, or whatever you're doing, the technology strategy has to align. And I think there are plenty of things that you can do to make sure. I mean, Erwin just talked about a bunch of things. There are plenty of things you can do to make sure that regardless of where somebody is working, they have as equal of an experience as they can to be productive, to be a part of the conversation and all that. So I think that, certainly, rather than try and figure out which employees are coming home or home, which employees are going back to the office, which ones are staying at home offices, make sure you have the technology strategy, a very flexible and turn on a dime kind of strategy where everybody can have what they need to work most effectively. And I would assume hybrid will be here to stay unless you want to lose a lot of your employees. I think that's what will happen there. I would also say, we talk about employees, in general. I would say in the customer facing space, there's a lot going on there, just trying to figure out what channels you should use, how you want to interact with customers. And one of the big things I'm pretty bullish on, I'm doing some research on this upcoming right now, is just how important the visual perspective, I call it, visual engagement. So video, screen sharing, co-browsing with customers really is. So no matter where the people are working, whether your agents are working from home offices, hotels like I am today, in a regular office, that they have that ability to be able to see their customers when it warrants seeing their customers. So they have to be able to, use video, be able to see a screen or see something, whatever the customer's doing, because I don't think that world's going to go back to the way it was either. Why go into a bank branch? Why go to a doctor if you can do that particular thing that you need to do over a telehealth visit or over a banking, video conference or an investment advisor session? I think that people have become very, very used to this and very comfortable with it, and you have to be prepared to be able to serve your customers in that way as well.
And Robin, I'll ask you because one of our longtime viewers, Misha, is in the chat asking specifically about how this relates to personality. I mean, introverted versus extroverted. I have to remember I'm an ISTJ, if I remember
Okay.
Myers-Briggs. But does that have anything to do with whether you want to be home or whether you want to be in an office? I mean, is this trending with personality, or is this kind of or with age groups, or is this just kind of cutting across the board?
I don't know that it's that you can make any sort of general conclusions of, okay, this age group is more apt. I mean, people will say, oh, the millennials are more apt to want to work from home. But if you can't tell just by looking at this screen, none of us are, none of the people you've talked to today are millennials. And I think we all are very comfortable working from home. So I just think probably it depends upon what your role is more than anything. What your job is. Are you truly a knowledge worker where you're very comfortable on working on your computers, doing video, you still feel interacted that way? I think that is more of it than the personality. I don't know, Erwin, Beth, what do you guys think? I guess maybe you've given this some more thought than I have, given your coverage areas.
Yeah, so there's been some research that I've seen from social scientists that have shown that younger workers prefer to be in the office because they want that social engagement. I've seen different breakdowns from the Future Forum as an example on attitudes by sex and race and so on, and you do see some differences. But I think the key piece of advice I would give our clients is you really need to understand your workforce, and so that gets into a lot of, I think, the employee experience piece that Beth's looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. And to answer your original question, David, I think one of the best pieces of advice I have for companies is to take advantage of the data that's available in those meeting tools and the collaboration apps. Let employees see how they're using these tools. Let managers see in the aggregate how everybody's using these tools, and let it drive some decisions. Not everybody needs to be in every single meeting, and I think that's been sort of the default these days. But it doesn't need to be, and there are more productive ways to, everybody can still get the information, But that those types of tools, we've seen a lot of tools coming out that will allow people to take a look at that data and make some really smart decisions using the data.
I'll
And,
tell you
and
though, you know what I have a really hard time with is I'm so used to being on video now. Even before the pandemic, I got so used to being on video. And I know, I mean, Erwin's told me this, he's done the research on it. It's like it's a best practice to, sometimes you just don't need to be on video, or you need to take a break from video. Maybe you need to just put your headset on, take a walk. Maybe you're eating lunch because you're on, on calls all day. But I have a hard time with either not being on video myself, or someone else not being on video, because I always wonder, are they paying attention? And I just wonder how much that's infiltrated companies now, because you see someone come into a video call, and you see their name and not their face, and you wonder, oh, are they paying attention? Because when you can see someone, you can tell. I don't know if you guys have thought what you think of that, but I just wonder how that will change moving forward too.
Yeah, I think that's something that we all need to figure out for sure. But to really the point that I was really trying to make is that you don't need to be on every single call. You probably really don't.
Right.
You need
Right.
to know the highlights, and there's certainly plenty of AI that can be applied to meetings now and deliver up those insights to you. So you can use your time more productively. If you're eating lunch and maybe you're not really going to be paying attention, you're going to go off video, just don't attend the meeting. Or if you're not, you have a project meeting or team meeting and you're not participating 99% of the time, then don't attend the meeting. Look at the recap and then input, provide your input via chat, some other way.
Yeah.
And we've definitely seen an explosion in the use of messaging, team workflow type applications that are designed to, hopefully eliminate things like the status meeting where everybody goes around the room and talks about where they are in their projects, and being able to use that sidebar conversation and just ask quick questions, provide updates, and so on.
That's actually an area we're starting to cover. One of our other analysts, Matt Beloka, is covering the workflow automation, workflow management. Erwin, you should talk a little bit about that maybe, because I think it's an interesting area.
Yeah, it's another new area for us from a research perspective, is taking a look at all the different vendors that are playing in the almost like a lightweight project management, more of team task management, task focused type applications. So companies like Reich and Asana and Monday and 25 others. I saw one that actually advertised in the Super Bowl yesterday. I think it was ClickUp was the name of the app. So the idea again of thinking about how do we better support distributed remote workers who can't go and sit in the conference room every morning at 10 a.m. and go through where they are on different projects and what needs to be done during the day, and allow for asynchronous work when people are in different time zones and so on. So it's an area where we're about to publish a market study that looks at the vendors in the space, and we're getting ready to launch an end user study to capture data about how companies are using these applications, who's buying them, and what are successful companies doing differently from those that are, to be polite, less successful.
All right, so let's beat this subject to death with just two more quick questions, and then we'll move on. People are asking a little bit about the concept of money and finances. We've seen some organizations say, sure, you can work from home, but I'm reducing your pay because of that. We've seen the exact opposite of that, saying, listen, I'm now working from home. You don't have to have a desk for me. You don't have to pay for my real estate. I expect my salary to go up. I expect to be compensated for the commuting time that I'm not doing, because now I'm working during that time. It's a bit of a tug of war going on, and it's not really a technical tug of war, it's a cultural tug of war. But I would like you guys to kind of weigh in on how you see that working out, and where you see people should be prepared for it. Come on, somebody jump in.
Yeah,
Erwin, I think this is all you.
So we did research earlier or late last year, third quarter, where we looked at how companies were supporting their remote workers, and we found that the successful ones, those who, again, we're seeing higher ROI or productivity gains, were more likely to pay a stipend, were more likely to financially support those remote employees by making sure they have the right devices that they need, high quality internet connectivity, and so on. I think the tug of war will continue between organizations that say, you know what, you're not living in downtown San Francisco and you've moved to Wyoming, so I don't need to pay you San Francisco salaries. But as long as we're in a market where there's demand for employees, and it is a buyer's market from the employee perspective. I think right now it's going to be really difficult for companies to try and cut wages or say that I don't need to pay you a competitive wage because you're not in the office, you're not living in a high rent district. That may change over time, but I think right now the power is still in the employee side.
Okay, and I promised one other question before we put this topic to bed for today is, and I've got to be a little self-serving here, but it's the concept of quality. There's certainly a difference in working remotely when you're sitting on your son or daughter's bed, while they're homeschooling downstairs, and you're using a notebook and the earbuds that came with your smart device, versus having a real high quality camera, having really good high quality headsets. Understanding the world now is a place where people are moving around quite a bit in it, so owning a headset is not necessarily the right thing to do. Owning two or three headsets, one for when you're commuting, one for when you're on an airplane, one for when you're working from home, maybe your hands-free device. Are we starting to see companies and users realize that the quality of the equipment, their reliability, and how they present themselves over these tools is becoming a factor in the companies and their individual successes?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see that, especially on the customer side, because as you're, who could be more important that you would be either talking to or running a video with, but a customer. So you want to make sure that that quality is good, and especially, for what we have found with contact center agents, if they're hybrid and they're going from home to the office, they want durability. So they are spending more money than they used to, more money than average on headsets that are solid, that have good cases, that are very well made, and they're bringing them back and forth. They need to make sure that they can handle that commute. So that's definitely one thing. And then video quality obviously is extremely important. I mean, especially in the CX world, when you're talking to customers, you want to make sure that you look good, that you are clear, that you're able to just show that the facial expressions, everything to customers in a very clear and crisp way. So that's definitely something that we do see companies looking at and making sure they're making buying decisions based on the quality, and not only just the video and audio quality, but being able to manage that. So from an IT perspective, being able to have the management tools, both at the employee's desktop, but also centrally, to see, is everything working right? Is it, performing well? In fact, I think that when we ask companies about CX transformations, the top thing they're doing right now in transformation initiatives is implementing technologies and tools to improve voice, video, and network performance. So it's like almost like back to the basics. We need to get these foundations very strong, no matter where somebody is working, before we start adding on all these new applications and bandwidth intensive applications and things like that. So I don't know if you guys have seen anything else. Yeah.
It's interesting that you bring that up because that's actually a segue, and I'm not going to take the segue, but that's actually what the topic of the next week's show is going to be. We're going to go in depth on PolyLens and talk about the importance of management and how we've got
Yeah.
some of our competitors in the space actually copying us now because we've had it out for a year. So we need to make sure everybody understands how we're leapfrogging them and doing even more with it. So sure, anybody else wants to make a comment on what you were just talking about or anything we were just going through? If not, I'm going to go into asking you guys about some of your Metri Star awards. But any other further comments on where we were? Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. So tell me about Metri Star. How do I win? How does David Danto become a star of the industry?
Well, I'll jump in just because I've done the first one this year, and that is, how do you win? You perform well in your customers' eyes is honestly what you do. So these Metro Stars that we're doing, it's something we're doing annually for right now for the CX and the UC world. Erwin's starting on workplace collaboration basically right now, and possibly some new areas in the future. But these awards are completely customer focused. So there's no analyst subjectivity in here like there are in other awards, where the analysts will come in and really make their sort of assessment of a particular set of products or technologies. It's not sponsored or anything like that. It's basically, we go out, we ask companies to rate their vendors on usually about 8 different axes, and we come up with an average rating across the vendors, and we can obviously drill down into each rating. And then we ask them about business success. So by using this particular company and this particular technology from this company, how did your business metrics change? How did revenue, costs, employee efficiency, and customer ratings in the CX space, how did they change? And then we kind of do the same thing, and we look at that I mentioned before. We look at the percentage of each vendor's companies or customers rather that are in the business success group. And then we just plot them on a chart and basically look at those who have scored higher than average in their average customer rating and higher than average in the percentage of their customers in the business success metric group. And those who kind of hit both of those areas, we award a MetroStar. We got 180 vendors rated this year in 10 technology areas of CX. So it's a big study. There are almost 2,000 research participants in this study, and so yeah, we in order to get that, and you have to be performing really well in your customers' eyes, both from their sentiment toward you, as well as just very practically, are you making them a more successful company because they're using your products and services? So it's strictly customer focused.
All right, so this is only my second show doing Poly Weekly News live by myself, so I guess I have to get a little bit more of a track record for people to like that. But that's good to know, because there are so many awards in the industry right now that are really just pay to play. You either put in the admission fee and you win, or you put in the admission fee and you didn't win because you never would have anyway. It's all just kind of a luxury dating service where people are telling you how nice it is to be with you. So it is nice to see that you're doing some things that are very specific to the industry, and that are customer focused, and hopefully not the same pay to play that everybody else are dealing with. So I guess let me go once around the room backwards and ask you guys what you're working on, what your research is. I'm hoping to see all three of you at Enterprise Connect coming up, which is in about a month from now, right? March 21st. We're all going to try and go to Orlando. If there isn't a new variant or any other new problem, it'll be nice to get together for the first time in a couple of years and see what's going on. So Erwin, what's on your plate for the next couple of weeks before you get to Enterprise Connect?
Yeah, so as Robin mentioned, we're getting ready to start our workplace collaboration, UC Metricast, workplace collaboration Metricast. So it's a market forecast that's looking at what a company's spending their money on this year. What are they planning on spending their money on in future years? How are they rating the different vendors that they're working with? How likely are they to stay with those vendors versus move to additional vendors? What's driving those decisions if they are looking at moving? So it's very much a snapshot of the market. Beyond that, we'll do more of a technology deep dive, looking at the UC endpoints, UC applications. We continue to focus quite a bit on telephony migrations, companies move to cloud, and how they're adopting things like BYOC, how they're managing and securing the applications that they're dealing with, especially for remote workers. So those will all be core focus areas, and certainly endpoints will continue to be a core focus area for us this year.
Okay, terrific. I look forward to hearing more about that as you get further into the research and get some of the results back. Beth, I'll ask you the same question. This will be a weird Enterprise Connect for you, first time in a few years that you're not the co-host of the show. So what's on your plate, and what are you going to be looking at?
Next week, we'll have our first market study in the employee experience arena. So watch for that to come out with a particular focus on applications that allow for people to measure employee engagement. And then we'll follow that up with a buyer side research study that kind of does look at those success metrics, for example, that Robin had talked about. So that'll be following up. We'll probably be launching that in March, April. And then beyond that, one of my focus areas is CPAS, as I mentioned, and that will certainly be something that I'll be looking closely at in March at Enterprise Connect.
Terrific. And Robin, back to you. What are you working on over the next couple of months, and what's on your radar, and when are we going to see you at Enterprise Connect?
Oh yeah, I'll be at Enterprise Connect. I'm speaking a few times there. I'm so excited to go. It's my favorite conference of the year. I just really enjoy it, and it's just great to see people and to interact. So I'm very, very excited to be there. So yes, I'll be there. As far as research, I'm wrapping up the customer experience Metricast. So that's where I'm putting together all the market forecasts as far as the buy side spending in that area. So that'll be, excuse me, wrapping up. And then I am going into a study called Customer Engagement Transformation. And that's where we'll be looking at all the different technologies that are being used in customer experience, technologies being used in home offices, who's making the decisions, what are the KPIs companies are looking at, and comparing the cost per interaction type. So is it, how much cheaper is it to do a web chat versus a phone call or a video? And then looking at who's making the decisions, we had a lot of questions on that. Who's really making decisions? Who owns the technologies? That type of thing, especially in the CX world, because you've got the technical people, you've got the operational people, you've got the users. So there's a lot of things going on there. And also really looking at some of the new channels. I kind of mentioned video and visual engagement. That's a big area we're looking at. I mean, it jumped quite a bit from 2019 to 2021. There's about 57% of companies right now already using video. And when we look at our success group there, much more significant jumps in the success metrics when you're using video versus whether you're not. So that's pretty cool. And then also looking at how companies are using AI and analytics. That's all we ever hear about, but trying to get more real on that. How are they actually, what are they doing with it?
Are
So
there any
yeah.
companies that are not really embracing video at this point? I mean, I'm trying to remember the last time, and I've got a rich history on the end user side, certainly in financial services and broadcasting or everywhere else, where you'd punch in the audio code on a phone and put in your password, and you'd be on an audio conference call. I can't remember the last time I did that. I don't even know if that I'd be able to. Are companies still doing that, or have most of them moved over to one-click online video?
I think for internal calls, definitely most of them have moved to one-click online video. I'm talking more about when you're, as a company, interacting with your end customer. So, you're calling the cable company and you need to talk about a problem. You're calling your bank and you need to ask a question. You're calling a software company because you have a problem with the cloud application. And wouldn't it be great if you could just do a screen share? Or, you're calling your doctor with a question. Wouldn't it be great to do a video? So it's more you dealing as a company with your end customers. And in that world, about 57% of companies are using video, not for every interaction, but where it makes sense. And so that's something that I think we're going to see a lot of growth in over the next few years. Is just, if I use video for what we're doing here today, when I talk to Beth or Erwin later, or any of the other team at Metrigy later, we're going to be on video. If I'm on a personal call, kids don't even use a phone. They just go to FaceTime, whatever their chosen application is, and you're doing video. So personal calls, family calls, inside work, with colleagues and everything. So why don't we do video with customers, right? It's what you're used to. It makes the experience so much more, so much better, so much richer and contextual. So I think that's the customer space is kind of the laggard here, but I do think it's starting to grow.
So that's after decades of saying it, video finally is the new voice, and I'm kind of glad we got there. It's good that people are experiencing it. It's a shame that we had to live through a deadly pandemic to get there, but we finally have
Yeah.
come to understand what's going on. So Beth and Robin and Erwin, thank you very much for sharing time with me. I appreciate it. I know we'll have you back on the show, and we'll see you at Enterprise Connect. And as soon as you come out with some more of your research, we'll definitely have you back on and make that available. I certainly want to make the point to my viewers, and I know that this was a show that was intensively talking about research. It's so important to be making your investment decisions and your strategic decisions based on good quality research. And Metrigy is one of the few firms in the world that are doing that good quality research. There are certainly others as well. They're not the only ones, but we wanted to bring you the opportunity to understand what some of the research is and some of the people that are doing the research and how important it is going forward. So thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining for Poly Weekly News this week. Next week, as I said, we're going to have a really interesting show. A couple of my colleagues will be on. It's going to be a bank holiday in the U.S., but not across the rest of the world. My colleague Marty Sexton will be on and be giving us an overview and show some of the new Lens insights. And Harkar out of the Nordics is going to be joining me as well. And he's going to be talking with a little bit of a hands-on demo of Lens. It's so awesome that we've been out for about a year and a half at Poly now with the ability to manage at-home equipment and make sure that the quality is there and the reliability is there and the inventory management is there. And one of our competitors just came out with it as if it was an innovation. So we need to make the show next week to show them just how far we've leapfrogged them and what we're doing with insights and other things like that. So for everybody at Poly, for the team at Metrigy, I certainly appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And we will see you on next week's Poly Weekly News.